live in the Pasadena neighborhood, 7th Avenue to 15th Avenue, Camelback to Missouri. Some neighbors posted on our Facebook page that they wanted to start a pollinator garden. We already have some hummingbird feeders, and we really just kind of want to make our neighborhood an oasis in the middle of Phoenix. So I contacted Keep Phoenix Beautiful, and then we submitted some questions to Lorna, and she'll be answering them for us. There's also 2 other neighbors in the background, social distancing. We have Heather and Lisa. So thank you, Keep Phoenix Beautiful and Lorna, for giving us some information on pollinator gardens.
Well, let's start with the first question. In particular, neighbors wanted to know what good year-round plants were for pollinators. What I would suggest for your gardeners is that pick perennials, vines, and annuals. In particular, also plant herbs, both perennial and annual, to attract them, including thyme, sage, rosemary, chives, garlic, chives, basil, dill, parsley, and the like. Perennials to include good perennials for year-round color, in particular trees and shrubs. What I'd like to refer everyone to is this publication, which is fantastic, which is Landscape Plants from the Arizona Desert, a guide to growing more than 200 low water use plants. In particular, the question submitted asked about native plants. Some of the plants referenced in this book are natives, and some are also adapted species because they come from climates that are similar to ours, like the Chihuahuan Desert. Some of the ones that I picked out in terms of shrubs were bee brush, or flame honeysuckle, buddleia, yellow bird of paradise, any of the birds of paradise actually, the Baja fairy duster. It's a non-exhaustive list because everyone needs to pick what is specific to their yard, to their growing conditions, and to the colors that they like to see in their landscape. The next question that was asked was about mosquitoes and other pests, planting things that will repel them. In particular, lavender, lemongrass, lemon verbena, the pelargonium or the scented geraniums, bee balm, ageratum, catnip or nipetta, basil, rosemary, and society garlic are all plants which will do just that. However, you also have to check some of them. In particular, the society garlic may be toxic to dogs because it is a member of the allium family, which is not appropriate for dogs. Another neighbor asked about companion plantings, if there are certain plants or flowers that like to be planted next to other flowers. And I would say that flowers don't have specific companions as much as they have cultural friends. One needs to group your plants that have similar needs in terms of sun or shade or exposure, water needs, and soil type. Typically here in the desert, in the low desert, we have alkaline soil. However, you can do things to acidify your soil or lower the pH there. Another neighbor wanted to know about encouraging lizards because lizards play an important role in our gardens with respect to controlling pests. It boils down to providing a good habitat for them and their activities, providing plants and also shelters for them, trees, shrubs, cacti, flowering plants, and also places to forage, places to bask in the sun, hibernate, and breed. For geckos, which are a lot of what we see here in Arizona, particularly around houses, because irrigated places, they need moisture as well. And also, above all, they need protection from predators, from dogs, cats, rats, mice, and birds. Cover and concealment, rock or brick piles, log piles, stones, and block walls. And also protection from too much cold or wet, given how sensitive lizards are to those two things. One neighbor also wanted to know about the use of bone meal. Because apparently here he is using organic bone meal in their garden and is concerned about harm to predators, or to pollinators, sorry. The real issue here is, does your soil need bone meal? It's not going to harm your pollinators directly, but it can harm your plants if your soil does not need phosphorus, or if you're applying too much of it. The other thing to remember is, given the alkalinity of our soils here, having a pH above 7, the phosphorus cannot be used because the soil needs to be more acid to be able to actually utilize the added phosphorus. And if that happens, your plants are going to look chlorotic or yellowing. Another neighbor had questions concerning, will flowers redirect bees from her pool or his pool? They're getting in the pool because you need a safe bee watering area. Essentially, a shallow bird bath filled with pebbles or other landing items so that they can light on the pebbles, take the water, and fly away safely. But yes, having some flowers is going to draw them to feed. And the other comprehensive question was about hummingbirds and what sorts of plants will draw hummingbirds in. And I think there are a great number of things that will draw hummingbirds in. Perennials, of course, those shrubs that we talked about earlier, but also annuals. Yes, there is a flower planting guide for the low desert that talks about when to plant these things. And I'm referring to the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension's series of publications that are usually listed as pubs. So this one is AZ 1100, and this has to do with what you can plant and what it will do. It goes into chapter and verse about the timing of your plantings, when you can expect them to flower, the conditions required for them, water needs, sun needs, and also if they are specific to drawing in butterflies or hummingbirds. For hummingbirds in particular, I would say bee balm, butterfly weed, coral bells, desert milkweed, which also will draw in butterflies, foxglove, Angelia, Indian paintbrush, larkspur, Mexican sunflower or tithonia, nasturtiums in the fall, and also penstemon in particular, any of the penstemon, seemingly the firecracker penstemon, Parry's penstemon, and also the desert beard tongue. Salvia will do it. Also, common sage will do it once those flower. We also can rely on cleome or spider flower to draw them in, and wild hyssop. Many flowering vines will also draw them in. In particular, they're very attracted to flowers that have a throat, that look like a tube. And someone also asked about butterfly and hummingbird mixes that are sold in the garden centers, whether they're effective or not. And I will say the following, I'll condition it on the following. It depends on what seeds are in the mixture, and if those seeds are seeds that are appropriate and suited to growing in the low desert. If it's a national brand that's marketed in Ohio and New York and Florida, it may well contain seeds and recommend planting times that will get you bad results or no results at all, simply because of how arid our climate is and how hot it is. So you might be better off picking the specific annuals that are suited to the low desert and making your own hummingbird or pollinator mix to plant. With respect to bee houses, because someone wanted to know about bee houses, these are houses that are designed for orchard mason bees or mason orchard bees. It's a solitary bee that just basically hangs out and pollinates fruit tree flowers. So if you're not a person who's got fruit trees, you may have limited use for having mason orchard plants, or mason orchard bee houses, rather. They're very attractive to look at. However, you probably should focus on planting annuals here and shrubs that will draw in the pollinators that are more specific to the low desert and the sorts of things you're trying to grow. Our next question was concerning milkweed, and I would say that you can certainly plant desert milkweed, which is Asclepias subulata. It's a wildflower that's planted typically September through March, but it is also a poisonous plant, so if you have dogs that eat things, it may not be suitable for your yard in an unsecured location. Yes, you can grow it in a raised bed if you choose. It's going to end up being between 2 and 4 feet high, so that's going to dictate where you plant it. It needs full sun, but it's an easy plant to grow. The plants will spread, but you can also deadhead them prior to them setting seed, knowing that this is food for the larval stage of the butterfly. So, do your research, but you can certainly plant milkweed. A question about can you still plant now? I would say you can't plant the milkweed now. However, there are annuals which you can still get in the ground now by seed. You can plant zinnias, sunflower, cosmos, and tithonia right now. But you have to do it right now because we're about to head into the inferno. And you're going to have to keep things moist. Once you do plant these annual seeds, it's upon you to keep the soil moist so that a crust does not form that prevents the seedlings from emerging. In terms of whether your soil needs amendment in your yard, I cannot tell because I'm not telepathic. The soil should be tested, or you should look and see what you've had success growing in the past. With respect to if you're getting enough sun in certain areas, there are 2 times of year to check when you're getting sun. The longest month of the year, or the month in which you have the longest day, which is June, and also in December. Both the equinoxes should inform the placement of your garden. That will determine how many hours of sun you get and when you get those. And based on that information, that should dictate what varieties you choose to plant, because the general motto for gardeners is the right plant in the right place. Partial shade allows blooming things like alyssum and others, but I think you really have to refer to a lot of reference materials and also look around your yard. With respect to people making site visits at this point for home yard consultations, I leave that to the discretion of the Arizona Master Gardeners Program. Typically, what they will do if you reach out to their program director, Beth Reedhead, is that they will arrange for someone to come out to perhaps do instruction for a neighborhood. As to a specific site assessment, they typically look to a community garden or a bigger space. However, they might be amenable to doing a visual assessment of your garden if you are to take a video of it perhaps and email the video clip, and then they could make specific recommendations. I do refer everyone, for the sake of being comprehensive in my approach, to reference materials. Those are the best answers for you in terms of knowing what to do. That's what master gardeners do. It's essentially being a reference librarian for gardens. We may not know the information, but we know where to find the information. It's much like being a lawyer. So, I refer you also to the website for the Arizona Cooperative Extension, which is extension.arizona.pubs usually, and also this other source, which is the Arizona Municipal Water Users Association, and their website is www.amwa.org. This is the Santa Biblia, or the Holy Bible, of low water use plants. This should inform your landscape. And your garden centers are a good source of warmer weather annuals and also cooler weather annuals. And typically that's how we divide these things here in the low desert. There are plants that you're going to plant from February to May, which are your warm weather annuals. And then there are also things that you plant in cool weather, usually starting in September or October, or when the temperatures drop below 100. That's a general guide. And that's also when you plant some of the herbs like parsley, dill, cilantro, and it's all of the umbelliferae, or the canopy-shaped flowered herbs, are things that you plant in the fall. But in the fall we also plant nasturtiums, poppies, and also some of the edible flowers, which can also draw in pollinators because they contain things like calendula, which are bright flowers. Remember that your pollinators are always looking for color from overhead, and they're also looking for scent at times. And depending on what you plant, you may also be drawing in pollinators at night, like moths. So that's where things like cacti come in, some of the white flowers when people plant moon gardens. So there's a lot to consider, but I hope this has been helpful. And I hand this off.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for that information. Heather, Lisa, and I, we were almost like emojis over here because we're looking at each other going, good point, and like, wow, who knew? So thank you for answering our questions.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
And now that neighbors are going to know more about the garden, probably going to get more visitors and more volunteers. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.